So first of all, thank you for coming. I know I appreciate you being willing to get C averages to give up on studying for finals, which is awesome. Good sign of entrepreneurship. What I thought, since it's a smaller group and since it is final week, what I thought would be easier to start off with is I'd love to hear what you're all working on. Let's make this actually targeted, since you guys chose to get lower averages and get more information. I feel like the least we could do is actually target what we're sharing with you directly to what you're trying to accomplish. So maybe we'll start in the back and work our way around, all the way up to the front.
Start with me.
Please.
I have a startup. It's called Detectica. We try to we find malfeasance among the employees of companies. Mainly our sort of beachhead vertical is financial firms, because essentially because they have to.
Physical theft or intellectual property?
What we're looking at is things such as insider trading, price manipulation, volatility manipulation, but also sexual harassment, leakage of insider information, ripping off grandma, and so these are actually two. The first set is sort of really very specific to the financial institutions, and the second set is very broad across companies. We're doing the work mainly based on the electronic communications. There are separate trade surveillance systems that are looking at the trade surveillance stuff. We're looking at electronic communications, and the things that we are adding that their existing systems tend to be sort of archaic, like 80s era sort of quote unquote AI technologies, and not even good 80s era technologies.
Expert systems.
We have we build rich cases that include a lot of different information. We build a lot of our own internal evidence structures. Like we infer the strength of the connection between any two employees, which ends up being very telling when you're trying to find collusive malfeasance. Or sexual harassment, by the way, because usually you don't see the harasser harassing, but you actually see what the victim's friends are saying. And then we also provide a very rich search interface to find the stuff that the existing systems, including the company procedures, are missing. And that's what the firms are getting the big fines for.
Okay. So where's the business at, just to get a sense? Is it product development, product conception?
So the business is, we have we did a custom build for Citi. And now with product, we have just to learn the space. We have a product that we're now piloting with a private equity firm, and we're in discussions with 8 big banks to just sort of do a little bit of market discovery to find out exactly what they want, because we have just really our version 1.0 of the product, and so we're gonna have to sell.
Good. All right, so product market fit is sort of where you're just getting to.
All
right, now, by the way, I should say this, if you don't have your business yet, it's okay if it's just a concept and you're saying, but here's what I'd like to learn. And that way we can make it really more fun.
Fit, and then of course the mechanics of selling to these big these big organizations.
Hi, I'm Christopher. I'm the CEO of GeoPipe. We automatically generate highly detailed virtual models of the real world. So we take data like laser
like CAD models, you mean?
CAD models, right?
Okay,
so we take things like data like laser scans, satellite photos, maps, and we use machine intelligence to understand what's in that data to produce highly detailed virtual models of the world. We're using architects and urban designers as our kind of early adopter market. We're starting a handful of pilot programs with firms in the New York City area to validate both the level of detail that we're producing as it relates to their needs and the kind of pricing models that we're looking at. We're currently especially interested in trying to nail down, for example, working with small firms and giving them a per project fee that they can pass on to their customers versus larger firms that are willing to pay a subscription, a lot higher subscription fee to get more unlimited access to the data. So I'm particularly interested in exploring that today.
Is the business use case for architects to get like landmarks approval or regulatory approval, or is it just for design?
It's for broad design and rendering. They need models, context models of the area surrounding their projects for almost every project that that they do, but they have a very manual process to put those together now, going out and taking photographs, looking at Google Earth, and then sitting in their CAD software and building out all of the buildings, all the trees, all the ground, piece by piece.
Got it.
We allow them to instantly get those models.
Got it.
Hi, my name is Sudhir Panamsetti. I'm a student at NYU still. I'm working on a startup idea. The mission is to launch sell eco-friendly clothing with high quality at affordable prices. I'm
Very
still working in the customer discovery phase.
Fine. Very cool.
Hey, my name is Michael. I'm working on a couple of projects in the education space. Both of them are still in the idea phase. So one of them is a platform that connects homeschoolers, help them to assess their ability against each other. Practice their social interaction skills. The other one is a real-time location tracker for a school bus, so that parents know where the students are.
Very cool.
Good idea.
My name is Tim, and this is my co-founder Naira. Nice to meet you. Two birds with one stone. We have a consumer research software, and for brand managers, market researchers, differentiating ourselves by merging consumer psychology with our technology. We'll automate a lot of research processes, like automating the quantitative and the qualitative aspects of the research.
Great.
So sort of going after the traditional Nielsen type business, yeah.
Yeah. And we're not trying to compete with Nielsen or anything just yet, but
Which is what
I
which to be clear is what everyone says when they're starting out, so they don't get attacked and killed.
I'd love to talk to you after. I have a lot of ideas for you.
We're offering deeper, what we think are much deeper consumer insights for a much more affordable price, because we're automating a lot of research processes, so a lot less opaque than the consulting system.
Well, that's great.
I'm Taylor. I'm a junior in Gallatin right now. I'm working on a bathroom product, basically to add onto the toilet seat to automatically cover and clean it, but less expensive than the ones on the market right now, so just designed in a simpler way. So that's it.
Interesting. Great.
My name is Kira. I'm a sophomore at CERN right now, and I'm the CEO of Taboo. Taboo is an app that lets you open and pay your bar tab from your phone instead of giving over cash or cards. And we do that by integrating with a bunch of point of sale systems so the venues can use the same software and hardware that they're using right now.
What a great idea.
Be careful. Where you pick determines how you go. If you sit there, you're up next because we're working our way forward, which means you went to the back, we're back to you. And then everyone has to go again. or you can go to the front and you can wait. It's your call. You know. Yeah, you go to the front. You can move that,
Yeah.
that laptop. All right, so we're up to you.
My name is Murad, and I have a startup which is in the fintech space, which is an asset management platform for millennials. There is an emphasis on millennials, even though one is asking, but have been interviewing a lot of this group, trying to understand the line, because they are different in many ways. So I know that everyone is saying that it's very hard to bring them on board. They are very tough customer to acquire, and I understand why, because I think that the method that I've been working so far does not work for them. That's what comes up from the interviews when I'm talking to them. So I'm trying to build something that is catered for them. So it's very, I'm kind of taking myself out of the equation, because I don't care what I want or what anyone else wants, it's what they want. So I'm trying to figure out exactly. So I had a mock-up which I showed them, then now I'm trying to work on a prototype, so that after I got all this information, I need to show them, and with that also make another more adjustments. But I'm trying to kind of move ahead after the interviews to understand if I can create the right product. Right, I mean there's never a right, but at least close to what they
So you're in research stage.
Yeah.
Perfect.
My name is Anita Dheer, and I already have a company which is 15 years old.
Congrats.
I teach at NYU as well. And I teach project management, so it's good for me to be a part to see what the new ideas are, and I'm focusing now towards project management for startups, so year to see how it goes. But I do have consulting and training, and I have published books as well. So I do work with corporations and so.
Great.
Cool.
So we are a startup that is catering to assisting college students, college graduates, and recent graduates on entering the workforce within the finance and tech industry. So,
Very cool. Any reason why you picked those two?
the reason why is because we do see that there's a lot of demand in technology and also finance. So we want to be able to, I guess, bridge the gap to those that didn't really get the internship right out. So we want to assist on entering that industry. So that's primarily why we chose it.
So this is a discussion on sales. So in sales, we got to sell, right? So I now know your pain points, right? So it's pretty helpful if you need to listen and hear what you're doing. And enterprises or individual sales all have that same first start, which is if I don't ask, I won't know. So for example, I'm going to give you, I have number 17 of the Teslas ever made. It's a cool roadster. If anyone here can guess the number in my head, you'll win it. Who wants to go? You have one guess.
42.
17.
All right, honestly, it's early morning. I know who's been drinking. We'll move on. Anyone? Keep going. Are you done? You get one guess. Anyone? It's a great car.
4.
2.
42. 1,317.
So here's the deal. You know how you could have won the car? If you just asked, what's the number, Steve? And that's the first point, which is in enterprises or any sale you're going to do, most people are afraid to ask. And if you asked, you would have ended up with a beautiful car. I barely ride. I think it's got 100 miles on it. It's been basically like a refrigerator plugged in my mother's house forever because I'm not using my spot. She's, it's her spot. The point is more, enterprise sales, like everything else, sales is the art of understanding what someone's needs are and helping them to find a match, whether it be you or somebody else, which may sound weird to you. But if I find out that I don't have so there was one, I can't remember who is dealing with consumers. Well, you're dealing more with consumers. Like for example, I've never had a consumer sales organization. I couldn't tell you anything about it. I know I don't know that, but I know a lot of great people who do. And at the end, I'll put you in touch with those people. And that is part of the art of sale. Today, we may not have a relationship that we can do together, but I'm not saying, thanks, I didn't need you. I actually know I can help you. I would like to be able to point you to people. It makes me feel good that I'm able to be supportive. And that creates a decent relationship where you'll feel like, am I generally a trustworthy person at the end? Yeah, unless the person steals your money, and then it's horrible, right? But for the most part, that's it. And enterprise sales, probably now more than ever, is one of the most critical parts of the business. You hear people talk about product, and product is absolutely important. I would argue sales is almost even more important because if you think about the complexity of what's taking place inside of the world in general. Have you watched a movie from like 15 years ago? Like, what was like 15 years ago, like a popular movie? Okay, that was a popular movie, fair enough. I'm trying to think of it like another general like lifestyle movie. Like, think of your favorite romance, rom-com movie or whatever it is. Like Zoolander. Does anything in Zoolander look familiar anymore, other than the people? Fashions clearly were already kind of crazy at the time. The little phone, right? That was fun. Like, the idea of a little phone now seems weird because we went up in size pretty dramatically. So nothing looks the same. And so while product can be amazing, the reality is somebody explains that how the use is and why it matters. And that, when you're talking about it at an enterprise level, the complexity goes up dramatically. So you all have very different businesses at very different stages, but you all have the need to convey what you're doing. If I were to ask the question of why does anyone care about a toilet cover? I mean, honestly, why would they care? Which is what you'll get. Your answer is?
It can give you this value because of X, Y, and Z.
Well, better, cheaper, faster is kind of like I got a lot of things in my life. A lot of things going on in my life.
Or safety, right? I mean, just cleanliness. Let's start there.
What Kate's doing is what a great salesperson does, which is they start figuring out what elevates the necessity, so that in my head, as I'm judging, what do I have time for today? See, Frank. What do I have time to deal with today? Right? Does anyone here volunteer what like sort of their priorities are for today? Finals is what, number 4? Coming here was number 1, right? What was number 2? Anyone want to throw it? What's that? Understand how to sell. So it mattered to you.
Of course it matters to me.
Right.
I mean, I can have
For-
a perfect
for-
model.
how about people out here?
I want it, so.
If I go to Washington Square Park, what mattered to them?
Where?
Washington Square Park.
Oh, they just want to hang out.
So what mattered to them was maybe not hanging out, but maybe getting to know someone better, maybe a date, maybe getting sun because they got no vitamin D and they're a little depressed. Like it could be a lot. It could be like, I'm supposed to be studying, but I want to be outside, so it makes me feel like I have a book next to me. Like there's a lot of things that are going out there. The key is to understand someone's value. What Kate did is the perfect example of the complexity, which is, okay, better, cheaper, faster might be all right, but if you scare me in terms of germs kill people every year, 1,000 people die because of toilet seat covers and being missed. Like you get me to a place where I'm like, okay, I didn't think it was a big deal, but now it's a big deal. And in your business, you spend a lot of time. How much, if I were to ask you, how much time does people spend about their product? Right? What percentage of your day is spent thinking about your product?
90% probably.
Okay. How much?
For me, probably 10, 20%, but because I have someone else.
Oh, you have someone else doing it. Fine. Okay. For most people, they obsess over the product, maybe the business plan, raising capital, and then it's nice to know that they can have someone sell it, and they think they're just going to hire someone.
Yeah. But I would also say, too, how many of you are thinking about your purpose? Like, what's the purpose of your company? Good. Okay. I'd love to hear some of them. Yeah.
So from spending a couple of years in this realm, what I see is that firms are really very operationally focused on things like, well, the systems are creating so many false alarms, we have to hire more analysts just to actually close out these false alarms, right? But the companies are getting fined $2 billion. Companies, every other week, we see a company in the headlines for something bad that their employees did. Sometimes we see the same company over and over again in the headlines for bad things that their employees do, right? And you don't get the headlines, you don't get fined $2 billion because someone didn't close out the last false positive. No, you get fined $2 billion because basically your processes are not covering a lot of stuff that they should cover, right? And so what I would like is to be able to sort of expand and have companies sort of do find this malfeasance, do a good job of finding this malfeasance rather than just kind of check off some box where we have some system or something like that.
Yeah. Other purposes, or what's your why in terms of why?
In terms of why vision, like long-term vision?
In terms of
or
what's your
immediate?
purpose, and I'll give you an example, right? So Harley Davidson, right? Why do people wait a year for a motorcycle? They wait a year for a motorcycle because it's all about freedom, and that's kind of the bigger why, or the bigger purpose of why their organization exists. There's other great examples, like Southwest, right? We get, Southwest, their why or their belief, their purpose is we want to enable, individuals to be with their loved ones, right? And everyone in their company is really empowered to allow that, right? There's a great story, I don't know if you guys have seen this video on YouTube, but there's a great story of how there was a family and they were all going to, the gentleman was being deployed to Iraq. And in the process of being deployed to Iraq, normally when you take someone to the airport, right, you have to say goodbye, right, at the ticket counter. And every employee in the airport and then at the Southwest gate, and they continued to let the family go back behind, the security, to the point of, as he's getting on the plane, the family's crying, and the Southwest employee says, "Why don't you go give him a hug?" And he's in seat 9F. And so the family goes and gives him a hug, and everyone on the plane starts clapping. And it's this, no matter who you are, like you almost want to shed a tear, right? Because it's patriotic, someone's going to fight for our country, he's leaving his family. But all of that is because of their why, their bigger purpose of, we want to help loved ones stay connected. So Yeah.
If I can add to it, their stock symbol is LUV, and their motto is we smile because we want to, not because we have to.
Right, yeah, right, exactly. That's another
So they
example.
hire people who have more personality, so compared to United,
Yeah.
where it was follow procedure,
Right,
what's the,
right.
10.2.3.4%,
Exactly, exactly.
They're
I share that only because, so let me introduce myself. So I'm Kate Gutowski. I've been with GE for, it'll be 20 years in July. I currently lead our sales initiative and sales in the company. So we've got 25,000 sellers across 180 countries. We just celebrated our 125th birthday last week, and we'll do $125 billion across aircraft engines, water, lighting, healthcare equipment, and a lot more. And with this responsibility, the number one thing we're doing right now as a company is we're trying to transform from being an industrial to a digital industrial. And so what I lead for the company is the digital transformation of our sellers. And so that's how Stephen and I have really come to work together, is because as I've been looking at how are we going to digitally transform this group of sellers who really, for all intents and purposes, has been selling the same way since I started 20 years ago. When I started 20 years ago, our tools were product training, it was PowerPoint, and then more recently, in the last 8 to 10 years, it's been kind of a CRM database where we put information in, but we don't get anything out. And so my job is to change that for the company, to transform the selling experience. And so that's why I'm working with Stephen, and it's been a great partnership, a great relationship. But I bring up the why because that's actually something that we're trying to figure out right now. And the reason why, and Stephen Sinek, or Simon Sinek, I don't know if you've read his book, Start With Why, but it's one I'd highly recommend. And the reason why it's important is because when you want to enable your teams to sell, or if you're selling yourself, it's so much easier to sell to a customer if they really understand your purpose and your belief for why you've created your company. When they understand your purpose and your belief, they will wait, a year for a motorcycle, or they will, you think about the Apple and the iPhone, it wasn't that long ago that we were all using BlackBerries. And it was, when Apple's belief, right, was we want to simplify the experience, right? And then they also had, Apple was also really focused on, we're the rebels, right? It's not the PC, it's the Mac. And so people like Stephen would, have their computers, right? And the app was kind of, the Apple was really a symbol of creativity. It was a symbol of I'm different. And so, anyway, so I bring that up because I think that absent a purpose or a belief or a why, you're going to be forced to go into manipulations. Manipulations are really carrots and sticks. It's pricing, I can give you the lowest price, but if you think about it, you're going to give the lowest price, and that's really just a manipulation. You're just, those are things that I'm starting to think about.
Yeah, I think Kate brings up the real reason, which is sales has got to find a way to find that connection. You on the product side created product market fit, but the business side may not necessarily see it. Or the overcome that you have to come is better, faster, cheaper is how much better, how much faster, how much cheaper to get my attention in my day. And I would argue that for the most part, getting people to change a behavior that has been approved in a large enterprise can be challenging. So if someone's already doing something in your organization, to get them to change to do the same thing but maybe a little bit better, faster, cheaper,
Yeah.
it's hard, right? But if you're asking them to change something completely in what they do, now you got a lot of people worried. Is my job,
Fix it. It's not working.
or is it my job? Will I get rewarded? For fixing
Which is
it?
exactly what you and I are trying to do right now.
Yeah, and this is what they're all trying to do here, right? You're all trying to find ways to break into a big company, and whether it be you're trying to take a article about Travis and Uber and the sexual harassment lawsuits, or the Facebook thing that came out yesterday where they had proof that basically women's code isn't getting committed if you're a woman engineer. Like, if you're trying to find that, right, you're going in there and saying, here's a huge need, please bring me in. Alternative, you're saying you have this need, you already have some solution, but it's a bad solution. How do you get someone's attention? Because you're talking about when you're going into a large enterprise, a lot of people, I mean, Kate, so before you moved into this role, think back to when you were like actually selling.
Yeah.
You had to convince somebody to change behavior. Could their job have been at risk?
Yes.
Were there a lot of people that had to get involved?
Yes.
Are they rewarded to just doing things better? Generally?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes not.
I would argue sometimes taking risk without any reward other than being a good corporate citizen
Right.
is an unusual thing to find. So you've got to find your way in. And when you were selling, what would be something you'd break into?
Yeah, so I should probably talk about, so I spent a lot of my career selling and leading sales teams. The first part, don't laugh, was in GE Energy Connections, and I was selling switchgear. And I was selling it to, I sold it to end users, contractors, distributors.
Do you know what switchgear is?
So it's big electrical panels and transformers, lighting contactors, programmable logic controllers, PLCs, things like that. So I did that, and then I also sold lighting, and really when we were converting to LEDs, right? So when we were going from the traditional lighting sources to the most energy efficient LEDs. Look, selling lighting was much easier for me than selling switchgear because in lighting, the product, people bought it for different reasons. You go into any Starbucks all around the world, you'll look up, you'll see LED lighting. I sold that to them. And it was, the reason why I was able to sell it was because they wanted to be Starbucks wanted to be a first adopter, an early adopter of LED lighting. And so what we basically did is we basically created the product for them. Or at least I made them feel like we created the product for them.
Exactly.
But it was, their need was they wanted to be innovative, they wanted to be an early adopter, and they wanted to be more environmentally friendly. And then they also had, more practical needs of we want to reduce our energy consumption. And LED at that time had about a 5-year return on investment, which doesn't sound very good, but at the time, this was 2008 or 9, that was pretty good. And today it's like a year, right? Because of the economics have changed.
So since you're all starting out, the first thing I notice is Kate did a lot of things that may not seem like it's part of your product. The first thing she did was figure out how many early adopter types and what would they react to. The second thing she did was she figured out how to make it like if their goal was to be number one, the first one out there, she said, we built a product for you. That wasn't a lie. She probably worked with them. I'm sure other people were buying it, but as a
We had
scale,
80% of it done, but we customized the last 20%.
of which they were okay with.
Yeah, they were okay with it.
Right? But my guess is she also had very senior buy-in, because the things she was saying about getting it done, where they wanted to be the first, they wanted to be energy efficient, like that probably wasn't the local construction manager who's responsible to get the 14th Street Starbucks operational.
It was the VP of sustainability.
Yeah, so, and that's probably not the normal buyer for when they're launching their chain. So why do I say all that? Because when you're thinking about your product, the first thing you have to figure out is what kind of salesperson can find that kind of group of people, figure out the messaging, and what is the messaging that matters to those people. So going back to the discrimination one, just because it's an easy general one, because otherwise it starts getting, a lot of your ideas are very specific, so I'm trying to take something that's generalizable, which is probably not a good thing, but like probably good for your business, but not good for us as a society. In that example, going in and saying you have a problem is probably going to make people worry. You'll probably end up with the general counsel, who probably deals with a lot of, like that would be your buyer. Saying that discrimination means you lose some of your best employees or can't recruit might elevate it. Now you got an HR person who's got a bigger budget than a general counsels don't have huge money. They usually are buying law firms, and they're usually at the tail end of it as opposed to the front end of it. But you could also elevate it to a group of CEOs that maybe now are actually very proactive. So you have I'm trying to think the top companies that are out there trying to battle this. Probably Uber right now because they're suffering. Problem is their CEO may not care, but you've got there. But you may go after Lyft in that example and say Lyft is a more welcoming environment and things like that. The point is that is part of your business strategy. It's not an afterthought. And because most people here at the seed stage, I figured we'd start with like what is sales, why it matters, and then we'll move to the opposite side of now you've got salespeople, how do you actually scale and manage them and get them going? because I realize many of you are just at the earliest stages, and I know a lot of people think, like if you're an engineer, you probably think, I'll just put an e-commerce site up and I'll be done. And then you're like, if I build it, they'll come, and they'll come as soon as they find it. Why does Google search suck? And then you'll start going to this logic of like, it's everybody else's fault but my own. So is that a fair agenda? Do I have buy-in? It's quiet. All right, as entrepreneurs, like open your mouths. Don't be quiet. This isn't like, if we're doing like, if I was at a computer science class or double E, okay, fine, quiet is okay. You could text me, but we're here entrepreneurs, so we talk and we debate. So think about that. Like what Kate did that's exceptional is what you may not realize how hard that is to do as part of a strategy. LED lighting was not a major business, and here's this company that probably has to figure out how many locations do they have?
They had 13,000.
So that's kind of a like big decision that if you fuck up, it's a problem.
In just North America, 23,000 across the world. Sorry.
So imagine like if you fuck up that decision, right? So imagine coming in and saying that and by the way, we have an 80% finished product, but we know we can get it done. And we're going to sell it to you, and here's why you should work with us. Here's why you should trust us. Here's why we're going to make sure everything works well. Now, how many people were involved in that decision?
A lot. Oh, at Starbucks? Probably about 7. 7
people. So when you guys go home for family, for like Thanksgiving or something like that, or whatever holiday you celebrate, I want you to think about 7 people all agreeing on what dinner's going to be. Does that feel like easy? Like, I don't want gluten, I want, like dairy, no, I'm on a diet, like all that stuff. Now imagine them making decisions for 30,000 locations on a new product they've never launched before, because maybe Howard Schultz said, I'd like to be the first in sustainability because it goes to our brand. Now imagine that. Do you think it takes one person to kill a deal?
No.
Really?
One person? Oh, to kill the deal.
Kill the deal, yeah.
The deal.
7 to make the deal.
No.
1 to kill.
1 kill, yeah.
By the way, and what's interesting, right, is as startups, you have something that's unique to you. The hardest part about doing that deal and that example wasn't really dealing with the customer. The hardest part was selling internally, because we had been selling halogen lighting and incandescent lighting and all these types of lighting for so long, for 100 plus years. And here I want to go sell something that's new, right? GE invented the first LED, but we were hesitant to go and commercialize it further because we knew the faster LED came, the more the other pieces would die off. And so as startups, you have a unique gift, which is you don't have that past history. And that can actually be incredibly freeing, more than you recognize.
Yeah. So the first thing is you've noticed a different kind of salesperson. Some salespeople are great at saying, you always buy this, I've always sold to you, I'm just now at a new company and I'd like to sell you a little bit better, a little bit cheaper version. So if I were selling, if your product is already in stores, but you have a better version of it, you may not need someone like a Kate. Why? She probably doesn't have context there, she's looking for the big deals, and she knows how to navigate complexity, where you want someone who has a tremendous amount of connections with maybe the guy who sold all of the paper products to NYU is available. Guess what he's done for 15 years? Gone out for drinks with the person who buys this stuff, takes care of them. Like they have a personal relationship, so when they say, trust me, this is a better thing, it might go easier. Whereas yours, you're trying to figure out how to do what Kate did, which is, this problem's existed for a long time. We got something, it's not really our issue. Our issue is we just need more people to close this thing out. And you've got to change their belief. In Kate's case, they had a customer that wanted to do this, and it was internal she had to sell. In your case, you may have an external customer that sees it as a problem, but maybe a problem that's just an acceptable problem, an acceptable risk. Are there any questions on that piece, or can we move on? Was that helpful as a foundational piece? First is like, figure out what you're actually doing in your sale.
Should we? I feel like we should also, like I'm trying to put myself in your shoes and think about what would be important. I think we should probably also talk about just how do you find customers, right? I mean, let's talk about how do you find customers and how do you get an appointment with them? Because in my experience in leading sales organizations, that's actually the hardest part, is finding the customer and getting the appointment. It sounds super basic, it's actually not. And what I think is exciting about the time and space that we live in right now is that we have all of these great tools, right? Like LinkedIn and Twitter and other forms of social media. I think one of the most important things is I think in modern selling, you really have to be very present and very visible on social media, and you really have to have a voice, and it can be time consuming, right? To find, you know, interesting content and to come up with thoughtful ways to communicate it, but it's actually really important. I think in the new world that we're living in, and I think this is different from when, you know, I know it's different. I mean, this is part of what we're teaching our GE sales organization, to be more contemporary and more modern. Because when you try to get an appointment with someone, it doesn't matter who they are, what's the first thing they're gonna do? They're gonna search you. And what do you want to come up?
Good stuff.
Good stuff. She's a thought leader. You know, she wrote this article on LinkedIn. She, you know, commented, you know, she had a very thoughtful comment on you know, this, you know, video or what, you know, whatever it is, right? But people are going to look at that. And so I think being very mindful of that is really important. And I think when you're using tools like LinkedIn, you know, having, you know, being able, I think one of the things that Stephen does really well is he will share thoughtful content with me, right? So he knows I'm trying to lead this digital sales transformation, and so he's trying to help me make my job easier. So part of my job is, you know, thought leadership in the company, but then I also have a team of product managers, and we actually have to get this done too, right? So it's both. And so, you know, with Stephen, I mean, he knows a lot of the stakeholders that I need to influence, and thoughtful content is a way to do that. So that would be one kind of piece of advice that I would give, is that if you really want to build a relationship with someone that you don't know them today, watching what they're posting about or looking about, you know, understanding what they're working on, and then sending like some type of thoughtful piece of content. I have people do that today, and it gets my attention because I need it.
Yeah, so can I ask, has anyone ever played the game Punch Buggy? Punch Buggy used to be this game where you see a Volkswagen Bug, you hit your sister, and if she finds it first, she hits you. What Kate's saying is essentially Punch Buggy, right? Which is, I don't know I have a problem or how big of a problem it is. By the way, you never knew how many Volkswagen Bugs there were until your arm is just in pain. And that's what she's saying, which is social media is essentially, okay, I have this pain, I've accepted this pain, I'm used to this pain, I don't care about this pain. But all of a sudden you start sending articles about how that pain's actually a big deal. Or you should really pay attention to the pain. All of a sudden it goes from, I'm used to it, I accept it, I've just learned to live with it, to why should I accept this? And there is a way to fix this problem, so why am I suffering this pain? It reverses the thought process that most people have. And social media, LinkedIn, search, all these things are ways to get someone to say, this is actually a bigger pain point than I thought it was before. And now it's gonna matter a lot to me, where I didn't really think it mattered. There was a point in time where seatbelts in cars did not matter, right? You can look back in older cars and you can see seatbelts, I think on Fords, before Ralph Nader, a Ford, there's only 3 models of their 60 cars that had the option of a seatbelt. The option of it. Because back then people thought, okay, I'm a good driver, accidents happen to bad drivers, but I'm a good driver. Why do I need this thing? And I use this saying a lot, which is, for most of your customers, they will see the future through the eyes of the past. So they'll always look at things that, you know, the way they used to do it, but is it a little bit better? Which is why improvement businesses are so much easier to get people to get, but very hard to get them to change, because patterns of behavior are even harder to change. Whereas complete revolutionary businesses are hard to get going, but once people buy into it, they fly like crazy. But the Punch Buggy example is one that, as Kate said, is critical if you're starting off, because you have to make someone aware that a pain that they've accepted is unacceptable. And that's not easy. How many of you, when you're starting your business, again, focus on where do my leads come from and who matters to me?
Sorry?
Where do my leads come from and who matters to me? So you have a business about bars, right? Is it the bars that matter to you, or the POS systems?
Well, both. It's POS first because we integrate with them, and then we target venues that are using this POS system.
So how much content have you started creating around the POS guys?
Like research?
Yeah, to let them know that you matter.
Honestly, not that much. Like, we just focus on the value that we are providing their
So I'll share a funny story. Anyone know Pandora, the jewelry company?
Yeah.
So they were trying forever to get someone to any major store to pick them up because they were just not, they were a teeny company, it didn't matter. And the founder of the company, who I got to meet, who was super nice, was down to like, they could do like a little bit of advertising, but they didn't have a lot of money left, and it was last money, and it was January, and they were supposed to spend it for the whole year. And after like listening to all these ideas about like maybe we do social media, maybe I do search, whatever, the person decided to basically invest all the money into a bunch of billboards on the ride home from the CEO of Macy's. And the CEO of Macy's was like, every day, all I see is Pandora effing everywhere. Why don't we have this brand? And that's how they ended up getting their job. So, you know, when you know, in your case, genius, right?
Creative.
And all the money was blown. Now you have to understand, this is a December holiday business. So basically, that was it. If the January investment didn't end up in a deal with Macy's, by November, October, November, December, there would have been no budget for Pandora, which basically would have meant, it was nice to know you as a jewelry company, and why do I need to buy this thing? And so in your case, if you know your POS is first, how many POS vendors are there that matter to you? 10. There's 10. Where are they located?
They're like global.
All right. Are they in like major cities, or are they in like shit locations?
Like the offices?
Yeah,
Or like,
the corporate offices.
usually like a bunch of major cities.
Okay.
Like the people that we're dealing with are like massive corporations, like point of sales that have.
So how do you make yourself meaningful to them? That's a lead, right?
Yeah.
Calling on them and saying, hi, I'd like to tell you about our idea for making bars, be able to use you know, a faster way to pay. You know, what do you think the likelihood they say, please come in, we want to talk to you? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, our biggest focus right now is actually like not on POS, it's on actually selling to venues and hospitality groups.
So you're trying to use venues as a
We already
lever.
integrated with- Like the POS integrations are done, so now we've finished 5 pilots, and now we have like 10 others signed up, and we're in the process of getting as many others on board. So like we have like 60% integration with the POS market share in New York, so now we're focusing on just capturing all those venues. And
Bars.
We'll add more POS later.
I think you're saying events, right?
What?
You're saying hospitality events?
No, like hospitality groups.
Oh,
Like
groups. Oh, groups. Okay, got it.
So you're trying to find large groups that have lots of venues, so you can do one sale and spread it out.
Yeah.
Fine. So that's, and how are you getting leads right now?
Through other people that know those owners.
So relationships.
DJs, promoters, events companies that like we can provide value to.
Yeah.
Usually it's like people that know people that know them, not just going to them cold.
Yeah.
And I have to believe that the appeal to them is to increase their growth, right? Because instead of having to fumble for a credit card or cash, I can just use my phone. And
It's like, yeah, an efficiency play.
right.
So like you can process more money faster. Like you take out, that's all venues want. They just want to process as much cash as they can.
Yep.
Serve more customers per hour, decrease lines at the bar so people purchase more.
And what's the
The whole
impact?
thing is like make more money faster. Which
Right.
Is like a venue's biggest goal.
And have you been able to quantify how much faster you're able to help them make money?
So
And what
we've been
impact
able
that
to
has?
quantify, like, how much time they spend per customer processing payments, but it depends on like how busy the venue, what that actually like translates to.
Okay.
Are you more like Venmo, where you're taking it from the bank, or are you taking it from a credit card?
It's actually like a SaaS model on the venue side right now, and then we have add-ons like data analytics platforms, chargeback management features, and stuff like that.
No, I'm sorry. When they set up the app, are you connecting it to their bank account, or are you connecting it to their credit card?
Their credit card.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I was going to say, get rid of that fee, they'll probably move a lot faster.
Yeah.
Look, so in your case, you're trying to figure out how do I get to venues of scale. So I think to Kate's point, the lead side of it matters a lot. If you're using that as a lever to say, you should get me because if you're Mr. POS, please pre-build me in, look at the scale, and look at the value. Then you have to get to scale fast in terms of venues that will use it. Now, for them, is it the number of users that matters, or is it just I can close more transactions faster?
It's
Okay. And then how do you get leads now?
from venue.
Just purely through friends and family, or through,
No, through people that know the venues, like
yeah.
you're saying before.
So it's relationship.
Yeah.
So when you walk in the door and you have a sale, what material do you bring in?
A demo video that shows them how it exactly integrates with their point of sale, because they've been pitched like iPad products and new software to do the same thing. So that's usually what excites them, that
And how many of your customers get you other customers?
Right now we're still small, so not that many, but we want to actually build out like a referral initiative for venues to send us to the next one.
One of the venue I have found very useful is speaking at events, and I teach as well. So most of my 95% of my customers are return students or people who go back to their companies, and that's how they bring me in and they say, oh, you did this for me, and can you come and do it for
That's
GE
great.
and stuff like that. So that's a huge way to show value, and so it's not like I've only made one cold call in my life.
Good.
And that too because somebody who has a PhD in marketing said you must.
Got to get the experience.
So
That's good.
it's warm calling that makes it a lot easier and better. And I've not created a brochure since 2005 because
Good.
nobody asked for it.
That's great. That's great.
But to Kate's point, look, you have to have a lead strategy as well. In the same way you have a product roadmap, you should think about a lead strategy. If the lead strategy is first go to people I know, because it'll give us enough credibility or enough show, that's great. If the next thing is I'm going to work with some of the bigger groups because it's an audience where they look and they say, okay, this group did it, so I can do it. Sort of a fast follower approach. That's it. If it's I'll lose out. Like, so Amex used to have a strategy where, because they charged more money than Visa, MasterCard, their strategy was to show that their customers were higher value. So one of the strategies might be to say, the users who use our product are more sophisticated and thus spend 3 times more, so you should have it just to bring them in. These are all different lead strategies, but then you have to build a strategy of content around it to get them to come to you, because the cost of going out and so it's funny, in sales people usually look at what the cost of the lead, of how much it costs to get going. What they tend not to forget, what they tend to leave out is the time-based cost. So if you think about it, if you were to look at hotels, for every night a room sits idle in a hotel where it's not sold, and same thing with airlines, it's an asset they can never get back. And in your case, time is not your friend. So there's a cost of, if my leads through word of mouth go and start slow and then they grow, there's a cost because someone might copy me. There's a cost because I'm not making transactional revenue. There's a cost because my clients or the user of the app may pick an alternative app or not care, or it may not become as spread or things like that. And so when you're figuring out your cost to lead, that sort of, how do I get enough leads, and replacement lead has a different value over time. And I only bring that up because when everyone's making their strategy on leads, they think I just need to get the first few leads and then people will know we exist and they'll want our product and they'll scale. And I would say even for businesses that you've worked with that are known and large, leads, I would imagine, are still important.
They're very important. I think leads are very important, but they have to be a qualified lead, right? So I think as you're starting to scale your business, this whole idea of the right division of labor, right? Where you're using marketing as a way to really create demand, where you're using, inside sales as really a way to kind of qualify, and then turning it over to sales to really grow and then close, right? We're kind of working through some of this right now in the company. But look, I mean, I tell people all the time, the only reason why I made it to President's Club 4 years in a row selling switchgear, of all things, is because I had the most amazing inside salesperson, and her name was Paulette Evans, and she was my right hand. Because my strength was being in front of the customer and presenting and building the relationships. And the customers would test me on my technical skills, and I could handle that. But what would slow me down was all the paperwork, right? We needed to do returns, we needed to do warranty requests, we needed to do a lot of administrative paperwork, and all of that was important because if that paperwork didn't get done, the customers, in this case, they were channel partners, distributors, and contractors. They would they'd get mad. They wouldn't want to work on the next big project together. And so Paulette would do all of that for me, so I was freed up to go, have more face time with the customers. And so, as you scale your business, like thinking about those types of strategies, and obviously you're startups, so that's that's not going to be an immediate, but thinking about that in the long term, I think, is important.
Oh, wait, does anyone know what this term inside sales means, or do you want me to
Oh
explain
yeah,
it?
I'm sorry.
Please do.
So there's a lot of different types of there's a lot of different types of sales. There is telemarketing, which is, hi, take my call, can I sell you something right away? There's inside sales, which is historically it's the historical sales pitch that somebody would have done face-to-face, but they're taking advantage of digital technologies. That can be a phone, that can be a web meeting, it can be a video conference. It can be, in essence, I can do the meeting that I used to have to do in person, but I can now take advantage of digital technologies to make it like I'm virtually there. And that means that the person doesn't have to host me, and it means that I don't have to find time to fly out and see you. But it tends to get used on simpler type sales or to set up meetings. So if I've got a 3-day call, so like for example, when Seamless Web or any of those guys were trying to get restaurants, but this would fit more for you. They would have people call up and say, let me tell you about our product, you should sign up. And it was a 1-2 phone call thing. So it was just, what do you do? Okay, I want it or I don't. And they would come up with a pitch that would get someone's attention. And so inside sales can be used to just simply get leads. I'd like to tell you about what we do, but I'd like to set up a time with an expert, either in person or on the phone. Or it can be used to close a deal if it's simple enough, which is it's high velocity. It's as many calls as I can get done in a day. And they typically go off for phone lists or things like that where they built people to reach out to. It's outbound predominantly. In some organizations, inside sales can be inbound, which is we've done a lot of marketing and a lot of buying of search and things like that. And we're going to take the phone calls as they come in, and we're going to try to do our best to sell you on that. That would be like, for example, if you've ever tried to get like a credit card, and you pick up the phone, you're like, oh, Amex Blue is cool, and I want to buy that. And you call them up, and they're like, oh, let me tell you all the benefits you get. That would be an example of inside sales. There's field sales. Field sales are where you send people out to meet the customer, to shake their hand, to learn about their problems, to see their whatever infrastructure they have, and to build trust and to go through multiple processes. And then you've got what they sometimes refer to as business development. Business development typically are more strategic. It's a non-standard deal. So so Kate's example earlier of having to sell a product that's not really in production yet, but is close. That's probably, she was doing more of what's called more of a business development role, which is you're not here to buy the standard offering. I'm going to work with you to figure out, you need something a little bit unique, but you're big enough. And if I can make that work, I'm going to do it, but it's going to require me to go work with people on the inside of my company because there's no standard contract or PO or manufacturing. And I'm going to have to work with you because maybe you've never bought this before. So I'm helping manage both of those things. Is there anything else I'm missing?
No, you cover, well, the one field sales, and then there's kind of a bridge in between, which is account management, which is kind of what I call a farmer type role, right? Where it's an existing account, you just want to, your goal is to know everyone from the CEO to the janitor and just make sure that you're preserving that company's place and growing their share of wallet over time. I've done all of them, the field sales, the account management, the strategic accounts. I preferred the strategic accounts, the business development, and that was the sales I did the most of, and the sales teams I enjoyed leading the most, but I've done all of them. But I think that one's the most fun.
Yeah.
But
it also, because it requires the most skill, it's super hard to do. And
But I would say though, well, and actually, that's exactly right. That there are, within sales, there are many different types of personalities. So part of what you really need to make sure is that you have a match between what your customers need and the types of salespeople. And let me give you a couple of examples. So for me, I was a really good closer, and I was a really good relationship person. So that's kind of the beginning and the end. The pieces that I wasn't as good at were in the middle, And that was typically where we were building the specification, doing a lot of detailed work around what type of lighting or what type of switchgear. And that's where I would use partners. I would use an application engineer to help me, and that would help me accelerate that cycle, right? So I was smart enough to know, hey, I could do it all myself, but it'll go faster if I bring in another resource. So depending on what type of sales you're doing, that's gonna be important to think about. But also you gotta think about the types of people. So in GE, a lot of our salespeople traditionally are what I would call solvers. So they are engineers and they wanna focus on the widget. And that worked for many years, but now that our customers are more sophisticated and they're more educated because of the internet, and there's typically a lot more buyers, you need less solvers and you need more of the people that are good closers and the people that are good at relationships, because that's what's going to accelerate your business in the type of, as a large industrial. For all of your businesses, it's going to be different, but it's about understanding there's different types of profiles of sellers. And so I think you have to understand that.
Can I just ask as a check-in? This is probably more complex than you thought sales was, right? Is that
yeah.
fair? Did you ever think you just hire a sales guy and they go out there and they sell it? Is this starting to sound more complex? Or we talked about using our words, we're entrepreneurs. Easier or harder? Before I just want to get a sense of where we're at in terms of holy shit versus, yeah, I got it, I knew that already.
Harder than I thought.
Generally?
Okay.
I think I realized the holy shit thing probably not too long ago. So I guess my follow-up question to that is, assuming you can get the first call, the email, the intro, the meeting, can you talk a little bit about best practices on follow-up?
Yes, I'm very passionate about this topic. Yes,
Issues
yes.
is everyone has their job that they're doing, and I'm trying to convince them to get me time and get in with them. And yes, there is the value I think you can add, but what's the, without being the towing line between pushy and then the closing thereafter?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I'm actually very passionate about this topic. So when I was leading sales teams, one of the things I always stress to them is you must follow up within 24 hours or less. And in fact, speed matters, faster is better. But, so if you can follow up same day, that's ideal. Because because you just left my office at 10. And if you send me a follow-up email with like the actions, the owners, and the timing by like 2:30, I'm impressed because I'm like, wow, he was just here. And it doesn't matter if you go across the street to the Starbucks and get it done. It doesn't matter. But the point is that you followed up. Because here's why. When you want big companies to give you their money, which is I think what everyone in here wants, here's what you have to realize. Like in the case of Stephen and I, Stephen and I are working together. We're creating a movement. We're driving a transformation. But look, and I've been very vocal with Stephen about this and very open. Look, at the end of the day, my name's on the line. So when I invest in Stephen's company and I bring that technology to fruition, it has to work, it has to be good, and people have to love it. Because my name, Kate Gutowski, is on it. And I've been here 20 years, and I kind of like it, And I might want to stay. And so that's important. So I think that's the first thing you have to think about with anyone you're selling to, is that when they buy from you, and in my case, it's a little bit more dramatic because there's a lot of eyes on us as we work through this transformation, but I think that's important. So say-do, your say-do ratio is everything. So one of the things I loved about working with Stephen is he followed up, speed was, he was great with the speed. He followed up really fast. And then everything he told me he was going to do, he did. And then when he would do it better than originally, I told you it was going to take 4 weeks, but it only took 2 weeks. Then what he's doing is he's putting a deposit in our emotional bank account. And that's very, very important. So when you guys are starting out and you want to grow customers, you need to look for ways to put deposits in someone's emotional bank account. In other words, Stephen knows I'm trying to drive this digital sales transformation, knows that there's a lot of eyes on it, so he's sending me that content, right? He's putting a deposit in our emotional bank account. Now at some point, he's going to cash in, right? but I'm all in, right? Because he's been making deposits. And it's the same way in your relationship with customers. So back to your question, what I would say is that, first of all, as Stephen started off with, you can never ask. First of all, never, ever, ever be afraid to ask. That's probably the number one thing that salespeople don't do enough of. And it sounds so simple, but they don't ask for the order. With some of the sales teams I led, I used to put like little things at their desk. It was this yellow bullseye, and it said, ask for the order. And I used to tape it right next to their phone because I wanted them to always be thinking about, because honestly, that's like 80% of this is asking for the order. And look, at the end of the day, companies, especially in your case, like we're working with one startup right now, and they're saying to us, look, we really need the money because we've got a meeting with our board. And believe it or not, like we really like this vendor, and like we want to genuinely help them because we like their technology and we want them to be successful. And literally, I had people in our sourcing department, this was just like a week ago, kind of jumping, we were like jumping through some hoops on our side because we were trying to help them. So I think, but again, it's because we have a good relationship, it's rooted in trust, they've been helping us, so they have a lot of deposits, and so we're trying to help them. So say-do ratio, following up quickly, asking for what you want, those are core ingredients. Anything to add to that?
Probably, if you don't do something, say you don't do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. That's huge.
There's a trust.
That's right.
I'll share a story from LinkShare, my first company. Our competitor back then was a company called BeFree. I know, the worst name ever on the planet. You can admit it, I do, even though they're my competitor. They actually chose it because free was the #1 searched word. So they thought if they put BeFree, they would put on there. Everyone has these ideas. They got stuck with a horrible name. But the point was, in the beginning when we started selling, there were things we absolutely did. There were things that were on our roadmap that we would deliver, and there were things that we would never do. And you'd be amazed at how many times a customer will ask you for something you will never do because it's not a smart thing to do, but they're being asked for it and they don't know why, so they're just saying, I need it on my list. Because no one's bothering to explain it to them, they'll stick to it. So we lost a deal at LinkShare because in the deal, they put out an RFP, which was really unusual, but it gives you a sense of how big the company was. And we answered it honestly. We said, we do this, we don't do this, we'll have this by this date, we'll have this by this date. We went through all this stuff, and we lost. And it was, it's really, back then, it was a big deal. It was a big customer. We were super heartbroken over it. So we didn't lose a lot of deals, and we fight hard. And I asked, why do we lose? And they said, because they do this, this, this. And I said, but they don't. I said, didn't you even look? And that never goes well, by the way. When you say to someone, I lost, but you didn't do your job to look to see if they were truthful, that, I will tell you, is a bad, do not follow that. That is a lesson you will learn the hard way. So the person was nice enough to be like, we did look, and anyway, but they didn't have it. And so about a year later, I get a phone call from the new person who's in charge, because the old person was not going to call me back. I learned the lesson the hard way. But they call me back, so the new person calls up and says, do you do these things? And at that point, we did probably one of the three things they wanted. The other two were just things one of which I didn't really want to do because I just thought it was stupid, and the other one was something that was coming out in like a month. And I said that to the person. And he said, well, if you do all three of these things, you've got our business. And I said, I would like to be able to say I do all three. One I'll never do because I just think it's dumb. And the other one we'll have, but it'll be an alpha. All right? And the person said, I'm telling you, you'll have our business if you do these three things. I said, I just like I told the last guy, I don't. And the person came back and said, you have my business. And I said, but I don't do these three things. He goes, yeah, but the other guy keeps telling me he does and he doesn't. And I'm sick of being lied to. So if you don't do it, fine. I may not agree with you on the number three things I wanted, but at least you were honest. So that's a story about losing a deal for being honest, and a story about winning the long-term relationship.
Great story.
And in reality, they became one of our biggest customers. They were a great partner of ours, and we never lied. So if you're asking about the follow-up, part of that follow-up is also being proactive. And if someone said something but they didn't ask you, like they're like, oh, I like you because you do this, 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 and you're like, I don't do that thing. Actually be proactive and say, we're working on that. We don't have that yet, but I will have that too. And you'll find that will create much higher confidence in you, and frankly, you'll be a better person.
Stephen makes a great point. I couldn't agree with it enough. I mean, one of the things that's unusual about my current job is I have a lot of technology companies calling on me. And when everyone says that they do everything, I just write them off, no matter how good their technology is. because I know that they don't, and I know that they're lying to me. So that's a great story and good advice.
Well, look, as entrepreneurs by end day, so look, Kate and I have to live with our names. Like whatever happens afterwards, we are visible.
That's right.
And you may not realize it as an entrepreneur, but you are the final say. If you even soft sell being a lie in words that it will bite you in a really bad way. If your product doesn't work with certain POSs, say it will by this point. I'd like to sign you up so that you can be the first customer. They'll be okay with it. If something doesn't work, tell them why it may not work perfectly. They'll be okay. Like we all live life. The goal is, the hard part as an entrepreneur is people want perfect even when you're better than. So you may be better than what they currently have, but they're going to hold you to the one thing you don't have. So your first emotion is to say, fuck it, I'll just say yes because I want to get to, and I'll deal with it after the fact. And I don't recommend that. I'd rather say, at one point in the sale, you'll learn to say, I hear you, I know you want all these things. Nobody currently does all those things, but what I do today is such a vast improvement. Please take a moment and say, no, even though it's not the perfect thing, it will get there. And you'll be surprised how many people, when you actually force them to think about that you are so much better than, even though you're not the perfect thing, will work.
And I would add to that by saying, if you have a very strong purpose or belief or why, people will wait even longer.
Yeah.
And they will go to extremes to work with you. Even if you're, and you may be thinking in your head, well, that's not possible because I'm a startup. Believe me, it's possible. If they believe in your why.
That's where your unique selling proposition comes and why it should be done to you compared to anyone else.
Well, hold on a second. Any unique selling proposition lasts about 3 months before your competitor copies it.
Of course,
So
that's why
there's
you
nothing
have to be
truly
first to
unique.
market.
Let's be clear, in your selling proposition, there's nothing truly unique but you walking in the door. That's it.
Yeah.
So.
Some of the things you're saying, do you recommend the book Strategic Selling by Herman?
Strategic selling by who?
I think, I forgot the full name, but Herman is...
Oh, Herman Miller? You know, I haven't read that one.
It's beautiful because it goes through all about the funnels or when you're going to meet people.
Yeah.
For example, if I'm meeting you and I kind of look at the way your profile or otherwise, and you're not a technical person, then I need to discuss business value with you, not technical stuff. But if I'm talking to an end user, then I need to really focus on the technical or bring experts in because they need to know how the product works before making a decision.
Yep.
So you have to look through who the person is and what they really, what their angle is. So if someone is an influencer, like you say, you don't want to make them look bad, so that becomes
So for
very
everyone's
important.
sake, what she's talking about is sales methodologies. So if it wasn't complex, if you hadn't reached the holy shit moment of like, oh my God, this is way more complex than just hiring someone to pick up a phone or let me layer on one more piece of complexity which she just brought in, which is you have different types of salespeople with different skill sets, and now on top of that you have a methodology. How do I work? Do I do relationship sale? Let's get to know each other. Let's go to a game. Let's build friendship. Do I do what's called medic? There's a lot of these different methodologies, and usually the salesperson is reading these books. I recommend reading any of them. There's tons of them. They're all personal beliefs on how you take your style and what you're really good at, and some are better at different types of products. So, so you'll see in certain companies, they'll say, we sell this way, because they believe for what they're selling, that's the way they want their sales organization to work. As a founder, I personally believe you should read all these books anyway. I have them all. They're all some iteration of the same ones. So after 3 or 4 of them, they kind of start sounding the same. And they're all. And by the way, the most interesting is, as crazy as it sounds, not a single sales book I've seen ever has math in it, which is terrifying.
Actually, I disagree.
You found one?
I do. In fact, it was the one book I was gonna recommend everyone. So the one book I recommend you read, if you really want, this book transformed forever the way I sold. I would say I was average. I became exceptional after I read this book and I went through the training. It's called The Dollarization Discipline. It has math in it.
I'm gonna write it down.
It's called The Dollarization Discipline by Jeffrey Fox, and it is a must read. The other thing I'd recommend too, just because you're all business, sorry? Jeffrey Fox, The Dollarization Discipline. I can write it down for you after. Highly recommend it. Here's what you're going to learn in that book. What you're going to learn is how to value what you're offering. So, pricing is one of the most important strategic levers you have to drive growth. And the price isn't what someone will pay for it. The price is what is the value that it brings. And so one of the key things you'll learn in this book is that people are motivated to, and it focuses on B2B selling. I would say that's, so for those of you that are more motivated around B2B, but I would read it regardless, because no matter what type of selling you're doing, there's value. And I've done both. I've done not direct to consumer, but I've done consumer and commercial and industrial sales. So yeah, I would recommend that. The other thing I'd recommend is there's a great, for all of you, because you're leaders at the heart of it, you're leading these startups, I'd also recommend, I'm sure you guys have maybe already read this, but Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, right.
Because a lot of what you're doing is you are the face of your company, and to Stephen's point, you're only as good as your team. And what you really learn in this book is how to win friends and influence people. You've got to influence your team, you've got to influence investors, you've got to influence people to buy from you. And all of that comes from kind of his 12 human relationship principles. One of the best things, the way I got involved in that is early in my career I was selling to Home Depot, the electrical switchgear. And it was actually kind of embarrassing. My customer, my buyer, recommended to my boss that I go to this training. And I'll be honest, I felt like a loser, because I'm like, my customer is recommending to my boss that I need more training. Like, this can't be good. And to be fair, I was really young. I was 23 or 24, and I was in a big job. I was in over my head, and I needed this. I needed this training. So after I got over feeling sorry for myself and like a loser, I went to the class, and I highly recommend it. It's 12 weeks, and for me, it was every Thursday night. And what I had to do is I had to focus on the people that I needed to build better relationships with. And in this particular case, and so then you learn the principles, and then every Thursday you get up and you speak. And you speak about what the principle is. So for example, give someone a reputation to live up to. Or the importance of saying someone's name. Or the importance of saying thank you. I mean, these are very basic, but they're very powerful when you do them every day and you make them a part of who you are and how you live your life. And it forever changed my life. It made my family relationships better. It made me a better leader. It definitely made me much better in sales and in sales leadership. So highly recommend that book. And if you have the opportunity to invest in yourself and take the Dale Carnegie class on leadership, highly recommend.
Has anyone here taken it? It is an amazing.
It's transformative.
Yeah.
It is transformative. There were people in my class, and I liked it so much they asked me to like teach it, and so I taught it for a little while as like an assistant. And there were people that couldn't even look you in the eye that would like be in this class. And there were people from, what you'll like about it is there's people from all walks of life. There's CEOs, there are truck drivers, and everybody in between. And there were people that couldn't even look you in the eye. And by the end of the 12 weeks, they could look you in the eye, they could give a speech, but then they were also transformed in the way they behaved. It's great.
Anyway, look, so far, are we at the completely over the top oh shit moment, or are we still okay?
Should we maybe open it up for any questions?
Yeah, why don't we turn it into a dialogue now, because it's, was it 12:25, we're almost done, right? Open it up.
What's the name of the course that you said?
Dale Carnegie.
It's the Dale Carnegie course on leadership.
Okay.
If you Google it, they should still have the 12-week one. Highly, highly recommend it.
It will be, if you're uncomfortable talking, comfortable pushing what you want to talk about,
That's right.
and learning how to speak to people, it is amazing. People come out and they are, as Kate said, completely transformed. And I think every entrepreneur needs that more than anything else.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for your time. I have class at 12:30.
No problem.
Good luck.
Nice to meet you.
Great.
Good luck with your
to meet
finals.
you. Yeah, good luck. Good luck with your startup.
Thank you.
I would love to be a customer of that one day.
Awesome.
especially in airports.
Wait. What was her number one thing? Ask for the close. Say, let's get a PO in front of you. Fine.
Any other questions?
We only have a few minutes left. Is there anything we can answer? Are we?
So, in my vision, I'm not going to be doing the sales for the duration. I need to find someone who is going to be quite senior and doing that. So what advice do you have? I mean, I've had some success going out myself and doing it. I've got a lot of experience in this kind of stuff, but it's not really what I want to be doing myself.
So you don't enjoy it?
I don't have the bandwidth to do it really well at scale. I can do one here, I can do one there. I don't think I said this in the beginning. I'm a professor here.
Oh, I figured that out.
Yeah, so it's not
Don't
like
worry.
I'm going to be doing this full time. And so it's just very clear to me that after it pops up past one or two customers, it just gets beyond my capability, especially given all the other things that I'm sort of worried about.
I can help you. I mean, I know sales, so the world is changing, right? And I know a lot of salespeople that would love to work at a startup. In fact, I had a woman who recently worked for me that I just helped land at another startup. And she's like, Kate, this is exactly what I was looking for, right? She loved GE, but just was looking for a change. And, you know, this opportunity came up and she's super happy. So I think you'd be surprised. I think you'd be surprised at how many people would be interested.
The hard part is figuring out who you're selling to.
And what do you need?
Yeah. Where, you know, I and my partners, you know, feel the need to be very involved because we're still really doing market discovery,
right.
You know, product market fit and stuff like that. It's a part of the interaction. It's not just sales. I mean, it's also these other things.
You know what I would say though is, as much as it kills you to like go through, I almost think my advice to you would be you almost have to be involved and do the first sale and like live it, all the back.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that way you really know what you're hiring.
Right.
And how important it is.
I'm okay with that. It's just that it's very clear to me that I'm not going to be able to sustain this to actually you know, build the kind of company that I'd like to build.
Yeah.
I think as founders it's hard because you have to be either in a position where I think the hard part about being a founder is if you're not the best salesperson of the company, then you've got a problem, right? Because you are either the product person. So when I do sales and customers come back to me, more often than not, they'll bring up something that maybe I didn't know about that was a bigger deal. And so I need to be doing the sale right? I had product in my company. I'm also involved in any major sale I'm involved in. But I had product because even though I have senior product people, at the end of the day, the sale is the product is the sale. It all circles back around. And so if I'm not on the market, I can't hear what's happening and see how my research versus what's going on in the market. I don't think you ever stop if you own a company, unless you become a sort of a secondary partner. And in your case, you're probably a lot of the credibility behind why this thing works. So if you're not doing any of the major sales forever, then you're probably not getting into major sales. They're going to expect to see you. They're going to want to ask. It's the differentiator of your product, which is, I know how I solved it. I know how I solve it better.
Right.
And they're going to need you. So, you know, in the case where you feel overwhelmed, even in the beginning, you might have people feeding you opportunities where you're helping close them. But you still, I hope you still want to be involved because that's actually the exciting part of the business.
The sense that I would like to work for I would like to work for whoever is you know, the head of that, you know, and then I can play a role, and then I can actually be used tactically for the things that I'm actually really good at.
Look, here's where I'll say one thing and end it, and then I'm sure Kate has her own thing, which is, look, you guys are on a fun road ahead. All the things that we taught you, you will learn. If it sounded complicated, it's because it is. Sales from the outside, people think is this easy thing if I hire a really personal person who I would want to hang out with and we're all fine. If it were that easy, but next to building your product, it is probably the single most important thing you'll ever do in your business, and sales is not going away. You speak to anyone in machine learning and AI, and they will tell you those are probably the safest jobs that are out there, because frankly, that is the hardest skill to have right now. And so take the time. To Kate's point earlier, if you could do Dale Carnegie just to learn how to be better at selling, you'll realize the skill, because you'll be able to spot what a trained salesperson versus someone who just thought they were personable and could make a deal happen. And I would highly recommend, I think every founder needs to be a great salesperson, and so I hope you take the time to do it, because if you're working this hard in your business, go all the way and really enjoy it. So that's my last two cents. I know Kate probably has her own.
Yeah, I think the thoughts I just leave you with are, I think Stephen made some good points, just to build on that. I think as you're thinking through what type of sales professional you need to help you scale your business, I think you want to be thinking about someone who's kind of 1/3 like strong, very strong business acumen. You need people that understand the balance sheet and the income statement and how to impact that. That's very important. Don't take that for granted. You also need someone who's 1/3 digital. So like I said earlier, the world is changing so much, and there's so much more you can do on social media and on these digital tools to help accelerate the deal cycle and to get more wins faster. I'm a big believer in that. So you want to hire someone that's 1/3 business oriented, or kind of financially oriented, 1/3 digital, and then the other 1/3 is, to Stephen's point, I think someone that can build relationships, because at the end of the day, people do business with people they like, and I don't care how good your product is, they only do business with people they like and that they trust. And so the type of people you want to hire are those that are going to be trustworthy and credible and are going to represent your brand well. So be picky, be choosy, and best of luck.
Good luck, guys.
Yeah, we're here to help, so let us know.
Let's do the last one up front, just so.
Yeah.
Other than social media tools, are there any other tools that you use that you really rely on to be successful?
I think it depends on like what you're doing. Some of the things that I really like, I don't know if you've seen the ITTF, but it's a nice kind of life and work hack. If this, then that is what it's called. And so you can do things like sync your Outlook calendar with, take your Outlook calendar and it can create like a spreadsheet of all your contacts. It can alert you for news. It can sync all of your pictures into the cloud. I mean, there's all kinds of work and life hacks on there. That's just, I'm always looking for work hack or life hacks. So, but yeah, I think we were talking earlier. She was looking for someone to help her with some surveys, and there's a great startup that I recommended that GE has invested in. It's called Catalent, and they're based in Boston, where I'm based. And for whatever task you're looking for that you want to get help with, let's say you only have $100 or $500, whatever it is, and you need something done in this time frame for this amount of money, you can find people that are willing to do it. And a lot of these people are Harvard grads, MIT students. I mean, they're all types. I'm sure there might be some NYU students that are on it. And then there's also professionals that just want another revenue stream. And there's retired CEOs and retired business. There's all kinds of people on the site, and we've had success with it in trying to get small things done that I just didn't have the skill set in the company. So would recommend things like that. So.
Stephen, Kate, I just wanted to thank you again for taking the time to join us at NYU and for leading such an engaging and informative session.
Thank you for having us.
Great.
Good luck with your
Terrific.
finals.
Thank you.
Two quick announcements before we wrap up. One, I'm going to follow up with everyone with just a short survey after today's session. I'd appreciate it if you take 2 minutes to just give us a little bit of feedback. Two, we are running actually the last session of Startup School of the semester tomorrow at 4 p.m. That's going to be Accelerators, Angels, or VCs, oh my. And that will be led by Alex Ispad, who's the Managing Director of Techstars New York City. It's going to be a great session. Hope to see you there.
There's also a class at 6:30, no?
Not the start of school.
Yeah, but it was supposed to be here.
Oh, yes, yes. Just start of school last session.
Thank you, appreciate it.
That was great.
Oh, good, good, good.
Thank you.
I hope it was helpful.
Definitely.
Great, great, great. It sounds like the work you're doing is really
They
interesting.
did it for you.
It's really interesting.
That's exciting. That's
Very
good.
first
Well, let me know, like, if you, firm up, like, what you're doing, happy to help.
Okay, great.
I think there's a lot of people that would be, this senior level.
We just have
Good.
Okay.
Good luck with your
Okay.
business.
Thank you so much.
I'm just,
I'll email you.